Hey, what is going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful nature render in Cinema 4D, Octane and After Effects. I tried making this before, but I feel like I was going too fast, so I'm going to try and slow down and explain things for you guys. So we'll start off with the modeling, then we'll go through texturing and lighting, and then rendering, and then we'll export it to After Effects and do our particle effects and depth of field and that. So start off with the modeling. You'll see that it's very, very basic models. It's just a bunch of polygons subdivided in different areas. I've sort of moved them around a bit to give a bit of variance, and then inside the polygons themselves I also have bend and twist deformers to give some more variance and give a sort of leaf-like shape, and then I put them all inside a subdivision surface, and then you smooth them out that way, and that's pretty much all you need to do for your model. It depends on your plant, obviously, but for this case I just went for something very simple, and that's all I needed. So we'll start off with the composition, because this is extremely important. I'm using a 2.35 aspect ratio, as you can see over here, and then we will turn on our render safe in here, and then we'll sort of position the camera, and then we will go and change, we'll turn off the show cone, we'll turn on our grid. This will be a sort of helper, and then we will also change this to a portrait lens over here. You can use whatever lens you want, but I like using portrait lenses. So I'm going for this sort of angle over here, just smooth it out. And you want to pick a focus, depending on how shallow your depth of field will be, but mine is very shallow, so I sort of picked this leaf as a focus point, and then I went in nice and close like so. And then I also, in my final render, I think it was more cut off like this, like that. And then I had some space for the background as well, but you can obviously do this however you want, depending on your scene. Let's change this to 0 and sort of get a nice angle. Just turn off this grid. Something like that. So we'll go and pin this camera so that it doesn't move around. And then we'll start off with our texturing. So we can open up our live viewer. I am using path tracing with linear compositing over here, as you can see. And then we will add in some light so we can see what's going on in our scene. Daylight system, just drag this up a bit. And then we will start off with our textures. So the textures I use are from polygon.com. I'll be using the banana leaf texture. We'll start off with a diffuse material. This will be our translucent material. So we can go in and take a banana leaf texture over here. And then we can go and add it to one of the leaves just so we can sort of see what we're working with. The way they're mapped onto the planes are I just use UV mapping. There are some Octane plant tutorials which have different methods of mapping your textures onto your leaves, but for me UV mapping worked fine, so that's all I really needed for that. So first we're going to go and take our diffuse. We're gonna take our texture and we're gonna put it inside our opacity. We will change it to alpha, and you'll instantly see that it looks like a proper leaf. It looks nice. Then we'll go and put this in our normal map, and then we're sort of starting to get our bumps, and I changed this to 2 just so I could sort of emphasize the bumps and ridges. Now this normal map is acting a bit weird. I think that's the way it should look, like so, but this normal map is just, I don't know what's up with it. It just doesn't feel right, but I think it looks fine the way it is for now. And did we add in our, no. So you want to add it, you want to paste this in, if you have a translucent texture, then by all means use that. But for me, I'm just using the normal color texture, and I'll put this inside of my transmission, which will give our plant, our leaf, some translucency. And you'll see here, now light's actually going through the leaf, which is what you want to happen. If I turn this off, you'll see it's not going through the leaf, and on it is. So that's why we're using a diffuse material, because you can't do that inside a glossy material. So now if you still want your reflections and your shininess on your leaf, you can go and create a glossy material now, and we'll mix these two together. So we'll call this glossy. So this will be our shiny material that will go on top of our translucent material, so we can get sort of best of both worlds. So we'll go and replace this so you can sort of see what's going on in the scene. Now we'll paste in our diffuse again. We'll paste in our opacity alpha, and then we'll just copy our normal map from the diffuse layer and paste it inside our glossy layer over there. That still looks like an incorrect normal map, but maybe it's right. So, and that's really all you need to do. You can go and paste in your specular and roughness if you want. This depends on how you want it to look like, but for the sake, I'm just going to do it. And then we're going to go and add in a mixed material, and we'll mix them together just at 50% value. So now we have our diffuse and our glossy on top of our diffuse. But because it's mixed at 50%, all the values get halved, which means our translucency gets halved. So to counter that, we're just going to double our translucency. So now we're getting 100% translucency, and that's all you really need to do for that. So now we're going to apply them to all our leaves. My Octane Octane tutorials have been getting a bit repetitive, so I've sort of taken a break off that. Just been doing the same thing really, slightly different variants and a bit more layers in some areas, but most of my projects are fairly the same. And that's why I've taken a break. I've been working in Maya quite a bit, modeling cars, been working on directing and composition and stuff like that, cinematography. So I haven't been spending much time in Cinema 4D and Octanes. I haven't been able to make many tutorials, and I'm not sure if people want me to do the same thing over and over again. But this one involves different methods, and it also involves After Effects, which is why I was excited to make this one. And here we are. So now you're seeing lights going through the textures. You'll see here if I turn off my transmission, light's not going through. Here it's going through, just gives a bit of more of a realistic effect. It's all down to personal preference there. So this looks quite nice for now. For our background, you can do this however you want, but we're going to go and create our own sort of bushy-like area, and that's how we will have our own blurred background effect. So we're going to create a plane. This will be our floor, and then we'll create a scatter. And this will be where we will scatter all our plants in the background. And we can just take the plant inside here, take it out of the subdivision. We don't want it to be subdivided in the background because it's going to be blurred and I'll just waste render time. So put it inside your scatter, make it all into one object. And now you'll see in my case, it's massive. And that's because I scaled this down using the coordinate system. So I just need to scale it down in my scale here. And then you'll see everything looks normal. I sort of scaled it down to real world scale. That just generally helps with realism. So let's put this inside our live viewer so you can sort of see what we're dealing with. Here you can see there's way too many going on. We don't need that many, so we'll just change this down to 100. And then we'll go and add in a floor for this white plane. We'll add in a ground texture just in case it just adds a bit more realism to the scene, even if you don't actually see the ground itself. So we'll go and take a ground texture from polygon.com. This one is in fact free. So you can go and find it there. Just plug in these channels. We don't need displacement because I doubt we'll actually see it anyways, and I'll just add on to render times. So you can go and apply this to our floor, change this to cubic. And then we'll take a look through our camera and see what it looks like. So if you don't want if you don't want the background to show, and here you can see the floor is actually clipping out the bottom here. So I'm just going to move this floor until it's not clipping anymore. And we also don't want this to show in our viewport and render. So we're just going to hide it there and hide it there. And you'll see our stuff is still getting scattered. So I'm just going to move this floor until it's not clipping down there. Now it's not clipping anymore. But now it's going through our plant. So first, let's go and add some variants to our stuff. So we're going to go and use a random effector. Just put our random effectors in our effector section. We'll turn off position, turn on scale, and then our scale we can make 0.3, and our rotation we can just change that to 360. So now we can take a look through this view. Now we don't want this blue background to show. So I'm going to bend the floor using a bend deformer. over here. Just turn the strength up, turn up the size a bit, and then we can also go and change this to 180, and then we can change this to -90. And now you'll see our floor starting to bend quite a bit, and we don't want it to be too extreme, but we also don't want the background to show, so something like that's fine for our bend deformer. So we're just gonna make this all into one object, and then make sure our floor is replaced there. Now you'll see that we're not seeing our sky anymore. So I'm just going to change the seed around so that the plants aren't going through the plants that I have now. So I'll just change the seed a bit. Ooh, that one actually looked quite nice. This one. So I think this looks fine. You'll note most of this background is going to be blurred, so it doesn't really matter if it goes through your plants in some areas and stuff. Obviously, it depends on your case. You can move your floor back if you want to, but for this case, we're going to leave it the way it is. So we're just going to do some last minute lighting things, and then we'll go into our render settings. So we're going to go and add in an HDRI. This will just add some variance to our sky, so our sky is not just completely blue. So I'm going to go and change this to a cloudy sky, and then we can just enable our HDRI settings there, HDRI settings. And then you want to make sure your lighting looks nice. You want to make sure your shadows and all that looks nice, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that. For this case, it's fine. It depends on where your focus is. For my case, this is a focus leaf, so this is the only thing that's really lit at the moment. And then you can also use these depth of field settings to sort of see what your final would look like. You can render your depth of field natively in Octane, but for my case, I'm going to do it in After Effects. So let's just turn this off. So this is sort of what it would look like inside of After Effects, over like that. Okay, so we're going to go and do our render settings now. So all I needed was path tracing 100 samples. That's all I needed to get a nice effect. And because most of the scene will be blurred, you don't really need that many samples. And then I went and enabled multipass. We're using EXR format with zip compression. And then we'll just take our Z depth with 250 samples. And that's really all you'll need. So we'll use our Z depth for our depth of field inside of After Effects. So now we're going to go and hit render, and then I will see you inside of After Effects. So now our render is done. We're inside of After Effects. We'll go and import our layers. So I'm just going to go and take my 2 layers in here. We will create a new composition. We will change our composition to 16 bits, working space, sRGB with linear. That's just the case that I used for my particular project. You can obviously use whatever type of color system you want. So we'll go and extract our Z depth over here. And then we will go and pre-compose this and call this depth. Now we're just going to go and adjust these points here until we sort of get what we're looking for. Very contrasty, 1.3. We can turn this down. So here I'm going for very shallow kind of depth of field, as you can see here. And then we will go and use Frischloft depth of field, which is a plugin for our depth of field settings. This plugin is just brilliant. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. These depth of field plugins are just incredible stuff. So I use this quite often inside of After Effects. Most of the time I actually render my depth of field in Octane, but in a case like this where it'll take hours and hours to render, I do it inside of After Effects. So you'll see here things are going very, very weird. Things just don't look right. And that's because we need to invert this. So let's just go and invert over here. And then we need to adjust our focus point again. And then you'll see that everything looks fine and it looks gorgeous. Like So now everything looks really nice. We might want to make this a bit more shallow. I mean, a bit less shallow, like so, just so that things aren't so harsh. Let's do 4 for 5. Want a bit more of a natural depth of field. Something like that, but I'm not actually happy with what I did there. Let's change this to 0.3 again. And then this depth of field should push back a bit. I don't want it to be so close, like so. That looks a bit better. The background, I sort of want this background to be pushed back a bit, but obviously I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is all up to personal preference. So now we're going to get into our particle system. This is where I start enjoying things. I'm really enjoying doing visual effects right now. So this will be our particles. And we will add in a particular. I've been using this plugin so much recently, like you don't understand, especially in my lightsaber scenes. But I might actually do a tutorial on that, since people's lightsaber tutorials out there aren't very good. But here we will go and change our, firstly, you'll see that taking a long time to refresh. And that's because our depth of field takes a long time to render. So I'm just going to go and save out a still of this. And then we're going to go and import that still back into our scene. And that's just because we don't want to wait for a render every single time we change something. So I'm just going to go and import this on top of there, like so. And then now we can sort of play with our particles and stuff. So my emission extras, I'm going to change to 100. I changed it to a box emitter type, forgot to mention that. And then my particle life, I'll change to 100. And then I will turn down the particles per second to like 5. And then I see we're sort of getting these floating particles. But because it's a still, we don't really need to worry about them popping out of nowhere. If it's an animation, that's a different story, but we're just working with a still for now. So we're going to go and change our size to 2. We'll change our size random to 25. And then we will go and change our Z up quite a bit. We'll go and add in a camera, 50mm camera, and then we'll go and turn up our aperture to maybe 200. And now you'll start to see some of the ones that are closer to the camera and farther away will start getting blurred to give us this nice effect. We will change the color a bit to a more orange. And maybe I should do some color grading first, and then we will adjust these points. So my color grading for this situation, I would probably go and add in an unsharp mask. I didn't really plan this part of the tutorial, so I'm just going off what I would do if I was in the situation right now. So I'll add an unsharp mask. You'll see here that we're starting to get some details pop out. And in the end, don't forget to add this to your actual original layers, but for this case, we're just using this one. And then I'll go and add a some contrast, maybe contrast, brightness and contrast. We turn this up to 25, and then turn up the brightness to 25. We go 50 here, 50 here. That's too much. 30 and then 30. And then I would go and add in a lens flare. So here we'll go use flare and go Video Copilot's optical flares. Put this flare layer on top of everything. We'll go and change this to add. And then I'll go and pick something like this. I'll put this in the corner somewhere of the screen, like so. Maybe turn up the scale to 500 and then turn down the brightness. Something like that. And then we can go and turn up our depth of field. Oh, that's a problem. Let's just turn it up here and see what this would look like if I changed it to 60. See the long wait. This is why I exported it originally. I think that actually looks a bit better. So let's just solo these. Let this thing calculate again, and then we'll export it again, and then we can carry on. So now we can go and export this and then import it. Wrong one. Import that, please. Thank you. And then I'll go and replace this on top of there. And now we can turn on our effects again. So now our particles, we can spread them out like that. We can turn down size down to 1. And then let's just turn off the solo. Then I'm gonna duplicate the particle layer. I'll change the seed to 1. And then I'll turn this up. No, let's not turn it up. Let's just push this around so we have some variance, and I'll make these slightly smaller, so maybe 0.5. Like that. And I also want them to spread out a bit more. Now we're sort of getting our particle effects, but here, this you want to adjust on as much as you want to spend time adjusting that. So that looks quite nice. And then I'll probably go and add in some warmth to the scene by doing it here. Add some warmth and see what that looks like. Okay, so let's adjust some of the curves because the scene just doesn't feel like it's got enough oomph for me. Let's change this around. Let's go, maybe I should turn up the contrast. No, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. Let's add some grain, just for now. And we'll change this to final, and we'll change this to 0.1. And then let's put that on top and see what that looks like. Looks the same. So I think that's all. So yeah, I don't think there's much else I can do with the scene. It has to go down with has to do with lighting and things like that. So you'll see here in my final render, you have some nice shadows and stuff going on in the background, and the lighting's a bit different, and it's also a bit more of a sunset look in this case, but I can't really do much inside of After Effects to change that. But that's how I made my plant scene inside of Cinema 4D, Octane, and After Effects. If you want more tutorials, you can let me know. I do have Instagram where I post my photos, and I also have ArtStation, which is sort of my gallery for my website. So if you want tutorials on those scenes themselves, you can ask me, and I will see if enough people want it made. So thank you guys for your support once again, and if you have any questions, you can always let me know, and I will see you on my next video. Goodbye.